Hi, this is Seth Whitehead, and we're excited to be joined today by Morgan and Stacy Tate of Brehm Oil here in Mount Vernon. We've had quite a few father-son teams on Hometown Energy so far, but this is our first mother-son team, so excited to have you guys on, and thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Brehm Oil has been in business since 1944, all the way back in the end of World War II. It's a great run for any company. But even more impressive considering the nature of the oil industry. How proud are you guys of the longevity of your company?
It's a miracle. We are really proud of it, and it's fun to have the rest of the family involved. We've got Morgan's our geologist, and our daughter does land work. My husband's involved, and we have another son that's involved with the agriculture part that my dad had started. So it has been a long journey, and we hope it continues on for many more years.
Can you talk a little bit about the company's history and how it got started and reached to the point it is today?
You're the historian.
Sure. My grandpa actually was born in 1910 to immigrants from Germany, raised poor in southern Kansas. He graduated in 1932 from Kansas State University with his architecture degree.
The Depression was going on then. He always would tell the story about there were no jobs then. What's an architect going to do? Nobody could build anything. So he went back to school.
Well, he had taken a surveying course, and through that surveying course in his architecture studies, he was able to land a job on a seismic crew, which kind of took him to another seismic crew for an oil company in Louisiana, and that piqued his interest in the oil business. He went back to school to get his geology degree in night school, and then got his master's degree in geology, and then ended up moving to Illinois in 1938 to Effingham to work for Kingwood Oil as the chief geologist there, and then proceeded to leave Kingwood in 1940 and start some geological consulting work in 1940. And
like many companies in the Illinois Basin, your family's background is much as entrenched in agriculture as it is in energy. I find these industries to be very similar. In fact, I know we often refer to oil producers as energy farmers. Can you talk about the similarities between running an oil company and working in agriculture?
At the agriculture might be a little bit easier. Actually, they both get some bad press nowadays, which is interesting. People love the land on both ends is what I really love about the similarity. I think people in the oil business love the land, and people who ranch or farm love the land too, and it's really, really important. They're both up with some serious regulatory challenges these days, and I think it's really important to educate people all around the world who think that everything's bad and dangerous, and I think it's up to us in the industry to educate and help people understand the true story.
I also think one similarity between the farming industry and the energy industry is you have both are dependent on commodity prices that are 100% outside of our control. So we just can do everything we can to minimize our input costs, and we just have to deal with the commodity prices that we're given.
A thing that comes to mind to me would be hard work. Mm-hmm. Is that
yes?
Is that accurate?
Yes.
But it's outside, and which is good and bad. It's tough work for those who are working outside, but it's also people who love to work outside are there for a long time. They like to stay. It's all family oriented.
Brehm Oil has been very involved in the community for many, many years. Can you talk about your involvement with the community and how important that is for you guys?
Well, I'm trying to pass that down to the next generation, but my dad just truly believed to whom much is given, much is expected. And as Morgan said, he was born to immigrants who they came across and moved to Kansas, and he had nothing. And he worked his way, and he just so believed in sharing in education and helping. You just found an article that said that he put at least 40 kids through college, but it was all down under. He never advertised that, but he always wanted people to have the opportunity to be educated. We just try. I serve on the chamber, not because the chamber necessarily, we're not selling anything that's open to the community, but I believe the Chamber of Commerce supports the community, and it's good to also have the voice out about our industry. And it's just important to give back.
The perception of the industry, the oil industry, has certainly changed in recent years, and many would argue that the perception is as negative as it is inaccurate as well. If you could change one common misconception, or two or three, what do you think those would be on the top of the list?
Well, there's a lot on the top of the list, but one of the misconceptions that I think is important, well, there's a couple, but one is that we are anti-environment. It really bothers me when it's either or. You're either an environmentalist or you're involved in the industry, and I believe that people in the industry are environmentalists too. So my niece laughs. She calls me a tree-hugging, Prius-driving, oil-producing preacher woman, actually. So it's like, how do those all go hand in hand? And it should go hand in hand. We can be good stewards of the earth, of creation, and I believe most people in the industry are. We really do care about restoring everything and taking care of being good stewards of the environment. So I think that that is something that is not out there, that everybody thinks it's bad. I also believe it's a justice issue for people who don't have money. If we do not have oil and gas, they are really going to live a different lifestyle. And no electricity, no, when you look around at everything we have on us or using, you've got a pin over there. People do not understand that oil and gas produces a lot of things that we have. And I really get frustrated when I see people that are going against this industry and they fly to wherever they're going to protest against it, or they drive there and they're wearing tennis shoes and carrying a water bottle, and it's like, wait a minute, think about this. Mm-hmm. And so those are things that I think that people they think they're operating out of the heart, but they're also not engaging the head. And I think we need to be smart and educate ourselves really about the industry. And I know you have an opinion because we've talked about this a lot.
Well, I agree. I mean, I live in this town. I hunt, I fish on these same fields that many other people around here do. So, no, we don't want to see oil go in a creek or on any dirt. We're just as environmentally friendly, I feel, as anyone is.
I would point out two things. We're the only country in the world that has significantly reduced carbon dioxide emissions.
Yeah.
We've done that.
Without being regulated.
Right. And we've done that at the same time as we've become the leading oil and gas producer in the world, and our air quality is also as good as it's been, I believe, since the 1970s. And that's a combination of more natural gas use in the Cleaner Act. So it's a combination of things. But definitely the environment has improved at the same time as we've increased oil and gas production. As at the same time of our economy has grown 10 years in a row, going on 11. So it goes to show that we don't have to have an either-or choice here, and I think that that's definitely worth noting, and I wish more people were aware of that.
Mm-hmm. When I think about, we do a lot of work kind of all around the world, and you see how many people are impoverished and don't have access to clean water, to electricity, and yet the oil and gas, keep it in the ground movement doesn't take into account, it's easy for people who have to say, let's have not, but if you have not, it's a whole different subject. And I think that, I don't know, I give people a lot more credit than maybe others might, but I believe people are smart enough and they care enough to continue to develop the means to get better and better instead of worse and worse. So I see a lot of hope out there, and if we just get sequestered and you can't do anything, then I think a lot of people are really going to hurt.
Well, it's going to drive the cost of all our goods up, so if we can't afford to buy milk right now, what's going to happen when we have no oil and we can't transport our milk from 2 hours away to our local grocery store?
Yeah, and what I tell people all the time is if the Keep It in the Grab movement were successful, the result wouldn't be significantly a higher percentage of renewable energy because of the limitations of that energy. It would be importing more oil and gas from other countries, which would result in higher fuel prices, less supply. So that's definitely not what we want.
Yes, as well as giving more money to some other countries who, frankly, don't have our best interests at heart.
Not at all. Morgan, can you talk a bit about your career? Did you ever consider anything other than the oil industry? You know, I talked to some kids at Carmi High School a couple weeks ago and talked about oil field jobs, and I think the perception is a lot, if you don't work on an oil rig, then you're not going to break into the industry. But that's not necessarily the case. There's a number of career choices. Could you talk a bit about your career?
My experience was similar, where I wasn't sure that I would go into oil business because of the prices of oil from 1986 to the mid-2000s. I went on an engineering camp to Rolla when I was about 14 years old, and one of the professors there had told one of the students, if you want to get a job in the oil industry, you need to go to Texas or to the Middle East. So that kind of took the good taste out of my mouth for that industry, I guess, and I ended up going to school and getting my first bachelor's degree in construction management. With about a year left in that, I knew my real interest was always the oil business, geology, rocks, the history and the study of the earth. And with a year left, I decided I'd go ahead and finish my first degree and apply back to school at SIU Carbondale. And I got my geology degree down there in 2011.
I knew he'd come back because he was a rock hound, and when he was young, rocks were all over. He was always coming up, digging up the rocks. So it's like I had no doubt.
Well, and you know, my grandpa had passed away in 1980. I wasn't born until 1984, so I didn't know him. You know, the older I've gotten, the more I've been in the business, the more I feel like I've gotten to know my grandpa, to know his history, to know the type of person he was.
You've read his articles.
The geologist that he was, the leader of his company that he was, and it's only just given me a tremendous amount of respect for him.
There's a lot of misconceptions about the drilling process and the exploration and production process. One thing that I've noticed that actually my kids have asked me is, you know, when they drill down, do they drill into actual puddle or like what we imagine as an ocean of oil? And you know, you see the old footage of the gushers and whatnot. And I guess that's where you could get that idea that happens. But could you talk about the realities of the drilling process and what you know, when we get 3,000, 4,000 feet down, we're drilling into there?
Yeah, we're not drilling down into this underground cave that's just chock full of oil.
Yeah.
You know, we're drilling down in to you know, to your driveway is the reservoir we're producing oil out of. You know, so you know, it's a hard consolidated rock, and it's not something that you can just drill down in it and it's going to flow back up, you know, into your tanks. We've got to use pumps that pump that fluid up and out and into our tanks.
You know, folks I talk to that work in the oil business, that's a huge part of their day-to-day, and even, you know, working the weekends, and it's just kind of consumes you. But other than the oil business, though, what do you guys spend your free time doing? As
a family together, it is a challenge because we've got all of us work together, so 4 children, husband, wife. And sometimes we don't want to see each other. They don't want to see us more than we don't want to see them. I'm a mom. But what we do like to do together often is gather around a meal. That's always a good get together. And we love to ski together and hike together. I think that would be the biggest things we like to do. It still involves rock. Mountains are a big draw for all of us. So we do travel west together a lot, and that's really important. And babies bring us together. Morgan's expecting his first child in June, so we're really excited about that. It'll be our 4th grandchild.
Geologist in the making.
Well, Stacy, Morgan, thank you for joining us today. Again, Stacy and Morgan Tate, generations 2 and 3 of the Brehm Oil third generation business right here in Mount Vernon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very
you,
much
Seth.
for having us.